So I never really took a shot at journalism. I like research, but journalistically, I'm not a journalist per se. But so I started looking into the case of Mandela himself. There are a couple of things that I did gather about Mandela of South Africa, who led a apathy regimen. Now, I'm not really sure what an apathy regimen is, but I'd like to know. Because it was that very regimen that was held amongst the African National Congress, was the landing effects of his imprisonment. So I took that as like leadership. And the research that I've gathered amongst this one individual, this one man, is unbelievably profound, because I, like myself, has been incarcerated extensively for extensive periods of time. And I know that an individual who can withstand that at a level of his degree, at his rate, and still be able to ascend the consciousness of that experience after having gone, to be able to lead a nation of people. So I want to get into it real quick. So in the fall of 1963, Mandela and 10 others went on trial for their lives, which were the trial known as the Rivonia trial, Rivonia, Rivonia trial. So basically, he's chilling somewhere in Johannesburg in a hideout location with his militants, because he have a team of militant men, remember, which goes by the name of African National Congress, were sabotaging a conspiracy. There was little doubt at this time that people assumed Mandela would be presumed innocent. There was a presumption, a preconceived notion that he would most certainly be found guilty of all charges held against him at that time. So, the Palace of Justice is where he was initially held, once having fled, meaning he escaped, he ran, hopped on a flight out. One plane was completely crashed due to him trying to make an exit. And ultimately, he's able to get out of the country in awaiting of trial. Now, in America, typically, that doesn't happen. If a person flees the country without consent upon a trial, they are more than likely fleeing the country. But so, anywho, the lieutenant of the case found a meaningful informant in who was considered to be one of his main supporters, but we'll get to that. He was already on the run for a 5-year sentence for attempting to leave the country without a passport. This dude was not anything to play with. But on a separate level, he was a very powerful man, because he had the ability, with one voice, as one man, to call a strike against whatever national or issue it is called. And what they were demanding was, let me look for it specifically. What they were demanding, after him being established a separate and independent military organ, meaning he was established as a nation leader in his specific nation, to to be the leader, not leader, but leader in terms of militia, the militant, the leader of the protection of that nation. You feel me? So what he was imposing was that he have a national constitutional convention, or he was going to reenact the calling of a strike. And their strikes were, these gentlemen were not anything nice. They would destroy government posts, they would destroy machines, they would destroy power facilities, they would deliberately burn crops. You know, about their justice, these young men must have really believed in everything that they were doing. They must to have, because these are men with families and responsibilities. They aren't militants in terms of non corroborated steps and or thoughts or planned notions. These people move by way of instinct and tact alone as it pertains to fighting for the justice of a particular country. So, anywho, we move forward. They considered these men on trial the Riviera 11. The charge partner of Nelson Mandela agreed to become the state's witness after being there, and is the one that was able to lead individuals to where his once capture was being held. Now, they had internal CIA from a tip from this gentleman, so I assume that he may have already been active police. However, this individual friend, it speaks a lot about that in his trials. It says that the next day at the Palace of Justice in Pretoria, in a segregated courtroom filled on one side with plainclothes police officers and on the other side with relatives and friends of the accused, prosecutor Percy Uttar called the case of States versus the National High Command and others. He then produced an indictment charging the 11 defendants with 2 counts of sabotage and 2 counts of conspiracy. The defense, noting that they were just then seeing the indictment for the first time, and asked Justice Quartus DeWitt for a postponement. DeWitt gave the defense 3 weeks to prepare for trial. When court reconvened 3 weeks after, Nelson Mandela led the parade of defendants up a staircase that opened into the center of the court, where specially constructed dock had been built, which meaning there was a specific archetype structure that had been built just for the occasion of an individual being able to proceed in walking and parading up those steps. Mandela gave the clenched fist salute to supporters that had become an ANC trademark. Mandela shouted Mandela, meaning power, and the crowd responded with a cry. Naguateyu, it shall be yours, shouted back the crying crowd. This was a very powerful brother. And his enactment of any form of force and or strike was just as powerful as his ability to say Amanda, meaning power, to the people, to my people. And his people being able to respond, Naguar Teyu, meaning it shall be ours. Any man that was able to start a fire was able to put one out equally. That is a powerful being. Defense attorney Bram Fisher led off the proceedings with an attack on the sufficiency of the indictment. He agreed that the charges were vague and failed to provide any indication as to which defendants carried out which alleged acts of sabotage. Instead, the government's indicted simply stated that details concerning the sabotage were peculiarly within the knowledge of the accused. Justice DeWitt, in his following red robes beneath a wooden canopy, found the defense arguments convincing. He told Utah that the indictment seemed to presuppose guilt and provided almost no clue as to the nature of the offenses. The indictment, Justice DeWitt announced, must be quashed. Got off guards, security officials rushed to rearrest each of the defendants except one. Utah salvaged more favorable publicity for the prosecution by announcing that charges would be dropped against Bob Hempel and that he would be the state's first witness. That's what the piece I was trying to get to, and I just got to it simultaneously. I have never did this before. But one thing I do know is information. So the defendants were back and forth, into court, out of court, and this individual, Utah, which was a once-time friend of the movement, decides to accommodate the courts by being state's witness against the acclaimed defendant. So the defendants were accused of sabotage, ordering munitions. I need to check into that word. I've never actually read or heard that one, and that's strange. Recruiting young men for guerrilla warfare, encouraging invasion for foreign military units, and conspiring to obtain funds for revolution for foreign states. The first accused, Nelson Mandela, pled not guilty. My lord, it is not ID, but the government that should be in the dock. I plead not guilty, and each of these other defendants in turn entered not guilty pleas as well. Yukathar delivered the opening statement for the prosecution by saying the accused deliberately and maliciously plotted and engineered the commission of acts of violence and destruction throughout the country. The planned purpose, therefore, was to bring about in the Republic of South African chaos, disorder, and turmoil, which would be aggravated, according to their plan, by the operations of thousands of trained guerrilla warfare units deployed throughout the country at various vantage points. Their combined operations were planned to lead to confusion, violence, and insurrection and rebellion followed at the appropriate juncture by an armed invasion of the country by military units of foreign powers. In the midst of resulting chaos, turmoil, and disorder, it was planned by the accused to set up a provisionary revolutionary government to take over the administration and the control of this country. Listening to Utah's address, defense attorneys realized that the state versus Nelson Mandela, the child that changed South Africa, that for most of the accused, the only possible verdict was guilty. The case was therefore, as far as we were concerned, a battle to prevent the death penalty from being carried out, and the defendants had other goals, however. Many of them saw the trials as the first and the last opportunity to explain to the nation why they felt compelled to do what they did for the sake of South Africa's oppression. The first prosecution witness would not be, as early promised by Utah, Bob Hempel. Bob Hempel had fled the country from the safety of Kenya. Hempel told reporters that he never had any intention of testifying against the defendants whose aims he shared. These boys wasn't playing. But this is the effects of the butterfly effect, because remember, the butterfly effect is when one wing stretches 90 degrees, the other wing will equally stretch the other 90 degrees, and so that gives it 180 degree wingspan as it flies. So you'll see that situations play themselves out in terms of timelines, because this case almost sounds like a case that I sort of know of almost verbatim, but I can't say verbatim because I haven't done all of the research yet. But these people were not playing. Let's continue. Instead, the star witness for the prosecution, Bruno Molto, known in court as Mr. X, a former, I'm not going to try to say that word, but a former militant of CISWI, Moto told the court that on orders from the National High Command, he had blown up a municipal office, a power pylon, and an electricity line. He testified that Mandela had given his natal region MK Command to pep talk about their underground missions. He described the workings of the bombs, grenades, and landmines and other weapons used by MK sabotagers. Also testified that he believed that the ANC and the MK had become instruments of the Communist Party. He explained that financial and family reasons led him to abandon CISWI. I kept promising that I would be paid. I kept promising that I would be paid. And they were still making promises long after I had given up all hope of ever getting anything from them. And they didn't care about me nor about the others, the recruits who were arrested. So this is after this individual has agreed to be a testimonian to a situation. He begins to second guess his opportunity and he takes off running. One of the individuals asked who did not care about them, and the individual said those who were in charge. So as I understand Mandela's situation now, I'm not sure I know for a period of time, Mandela did remain under arrest or in arrest, being in separation, in incarceration. It says Mandela spent the next 18 years in prison on Robben Island, just off Cape Town. And he worked in a lime quarry and was allowed one letter and one visit every 6 months. In 1982, authorities transferred Mandela and 4 other Riviera defendants to Portsmouth Prison in suburban Cape Town. The winds of change began to sweep South Africa in 1985. Remember, he having been first incarcerated in 1963. Dennis Goldberg became the first of the Riviera defendants to be released from prison. President P.W. Botha offered Mandela a deal and renounced violence and to be freed. Mandela refused the offer. Only free men can negotiate. A prisoner cannot enter into contracts. In November of 1985, the National Party government entered into a secret negotiations with Mandela for what it was hoped might be an eventual transition to multiracial government. By the beginning of 1990, only Mandela among the Riviera defendants remained in prison, and now at the bungalow in Victor Vester prison, where he continued to escape negotiations. In February 1990, President F.W. de Klerk announced the release of Mandela. The next year, Mandela was elected president of the ANC. In April 1994, South Africans of all races went to the polls. The ANC won 62% of the vote on May 10th, and Nelson Mandela took the oath of office as the first black president of South Africa. He can wonder how the history of South Africa might have been different had Mandela been sentenced to death, as he might have well been. It is hard to imagine any leader emerging in his place with half his grace and willingness to forgive or power to inspire. The world would have been a poorer place without Mandela. political prisoners, ladies and gentlemen. Had I not been one who had been incarcerated, I'm meaning penitentiary, confinement, incarcerating, confinement. You feel me? Had I not been an individual who had endured a period of sentencing, a period of trial, a period of court, a period of loss and lack of freedom, a period of loss and lack of specific rights, a period of being in confinement, it's no way that I would be able to interpretate the perspective of a presumed leader in a position and how he leads when individuals would have no power and no control at all. That is the example. That is the expression of a true leader that is a considered political prisoner. Oh my God, I'm talking so fast. I'm thinking faster than I'm talking. And that's a problem. Political prisoner. So, yeah, I just wanted to say that. And then ultimately, I feel, in my perspective, I feel that the movement to free Larry Hoover is going to be very successful. Because this individual's timelines and situations, as much as I know, in terms of the numbers, the times, the way situations have played themselves out, were ultimately congruent in a perspective. And so I ultimately believe that this brother will eventually, sometime soon, be considered a free man, and ultimately, possibly, believably so, a leader of a nation of people. Young men and women who alike, who believe in the perpetuality of righteousness, of connection, of ability to communicate, of ability to protect, ability to love and inspire and to teach one and to learn from one too. So, yeah,